Okay. So, list all the possible zeros as a fraction, plus and minus p over q. So we don't worry about whether p was positive or q was positive. Our possibilities are all going to be both positive and negatives, and all I'm looking for is the absolute value of p and the absolute value of q. All right? So, what we're going to be doing with these is we are going to be looking at factors. The factors of p divided by the factors of q. All right, so for example, here's my function. F of x is equal to 4x to the fourth plus 3x minus 5. My p is my integer term, the absolute value of that. What is my integer term? And therefore, what are my factors of 5? Okay. My q is what? And therefore, my factors of q are what? 1, 2, and 4. Kind of put them in order. We don't care about if it's positive or negative because we're going to be putting a plus and minus in front of this whole string of answers. So we're just looking at the absolute values. So I'm looking for my p's over my q's. There's going to be a long string of numbers that I can choose from. But I know that it's going to be plus and minus. So we're going to write these and then we're going to organize them. Okay? So I'm going to start with the first p, which is 1. So my possibilities are plus and minus 1 over 1, correct? 1 over and 1 over, correct? So I've used my p, and I've done it over all the q's. Now I move to my next p, which is what? So I'll do plus and minus 5 over, 5 over, 5 over, okay? And so then we're going to rearrange them and put them in a long list, and we're going to arrange them from smallest to largest so that they're organized. Sometimes, as you come up with your groups, numbers repeat, and you just include it once. So my final answer of p over q, and these are not the ones that work, these are my possible ones that I'm going to look at. So I made the whole integer system into or real system into a smaller group of numbers that I can choose from. Rachel? You know, just for right now, as we're listing them, we're going to do it so that we know that we've taken care of that combination, and now we're going to write our final answer, and we won't write it as a fraction if we don't need to. So the smallest number is what? 1/4, and then, and then, and then, 5/4, and then, so these, if I was trying to figure out my zeros, those are the, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 numbers that I would have to choose from. And out of those 12, one of them at least should work. Because it's plus and minus, right? So I would use 1/4, and I might try -1/4. Okay? All right, let's try the next one. What is my p? Right now, we're just finding the possible ones. So my p is what? And who else knows? What's my q? Okay, and my factors of these are 1 and 5 and 1 and 3. Now, don't get them backwards. It's p over q. Don't flip it and do q over p. So p over q means plus and minus 1 over 1 and 1 over 3, 5 over 1 and, so in order, I would say then, as my final answer, I would start with 1/3, and then 1, and then, and I'm putting a plus and minus in front of that answer, and that implies that it's plus and minus for each one of those options. Are we good? Good. You know what? I was sick one day, so we lost a day. Well, you probably didn't have that many to do. As long as you can check, but from now on a quiz, put them in order, okay? All right, P is what? 20. So your factors of 20 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and your Q is just, so P over Q is plus and minus. It's really just the factors of P. 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. This one was an easier one. No, she means the next part.
Oh, yeah,
It's not bad. It's not bad. Yes. That's fine. Okay, so I'm saying you can put plus and minus in front of the answer and it's understood for the entire thing. All right, so now I want you to find the real. All of them? All of them, and they must be real. Does real mean imaginary? No imaginary. All means factored all the way down. So ask yourself, how many possible factors or roots are there? How do you know? Highest degree is 3, so I know that out of my solutions, I should have at most 3 of them. Well, we're not guessing and checking as much as we would have been, because we've just created a list of what to guess and check from. So when we do these, when we do these, I'm not going to make them huge, okay? I will make your answers or your first zeros fall somewhere between -2 and +2, so that you are not having to go all the way up to plus and minus 5 or plus and minus 6, okay? So I will make it workable where you can find the answers between plus and minus 2, everything in between. Is there some guessing and checking? Well, I would hope that maybe you could see some kind of a pattern, all right? So if I want to find my real zeros, what I want to do first is do my P over my Q. In this case, P over Q is going to be the factors of 18 because my Q is 1. Would you agree? So I'm just going to say my P over my Q is plus and minus 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. And so remember I said that we're going to try and make these fall between plus and minus 2. So how am I going to figure out, those of you that have done this, how am I going to figure out how to take this polynomial and decide which one of these are zeros? Raise your hand. No, we're not going to plug and chug. What have we learned that allows us to decide if a value is a 0 or not? Synthetic division. Does that make sense? Every term must be accounted for. So we're going to do, using synthetic division, 1, -4, -15, 18, and yes, we do have some trial and error. Okay? But, well, we're going to try 1. This is what kind of a function? It's a cubic, correct? Once we find 1, our polynomial will be a, what will our answer polynomial be? No. All right. We start with a cubic. It'll be a quadratic. What can we use for the quadratic? Right. All right. So I'm going to try positive 1. So we go 1, 1, -3. Oh, look how nice this is going to be. -3, -18, and -18, 0. Is 1 a 0? Yes. Because we got 0. Great. Therefore, I know that my polynomial is x squared minus 3x minus 18. That is my polynomial that I'm left with. Why did I start with x squared? Because I started with an x cubed. I took it down 1 factor because I found a 0, which means I have a quadratic. I can use the quadratic formula, or I can factor. This is going to be x minus 6 and x plus 3, which gives me my final zeros to be negative 3 and 6. Were these options in my P over my Q? Absolutely. They showed up here.
Right, so would the answer be like 1, negative 3, and 6?
Yep. And if I asked you to graph this, then you would know exactly where it crosses, and you would know what the x-intercept is, correct? So in the homework, I believe I have you graphing some of these. You should know where the x-intercept, yes. Okay, all right. So on this next one, we know that our P over our Q's are going to be your factors of 14, yes?
Q is 1.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
can do that for quizzes, right? Yeah.
No. All right, so here we go. That means I'm going to say 1, negative 8, 5, and 14. I'll try negative 1. 1, negative 1, negative 9. Oh, gosh, 9. 14. I'm getting these the first time. 0.
See, I kept not on the homework, so I'm not negative ones.
Well. Okay, so that means I have x squared minus 9x plus 14 equals 0. So that's going to be x minus 7 and x minus 2. Can't see it, factoring it, use your box method, correct? Use the quadratic formula. If I had 4 terms going on down there, how would I factor 4 terms? I group, I chunk. 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 Negative 1 from up here, positive 7, and positive 2 are my zeros. Are we good?
Yeah. I hope I'm left though. How did you get the negative 1?
Because the negative 1 is the first one that I used, Maddie, and I got to make sure that I included that. Negative 1 is what gave me this quadratic. It's plus or minus 1, 2, 7, 14. I chose negative 1. I could have chose 1. It wouldn't have worked because I wouldn't have gotten a 0 down here. Yeah. It'll be negative 1, positive 1, 2, and negative 2. 0 would only work if you're able to pull an x out of every single term, because your p has to be the integer term, right? It can't have a variable associated with it.
P is like the
Integer term.
answer the factors, and then 0 would never really be a
Factor, right. Okay, all right, possible values of a pyramid. If the height is x plus 1, and the square base, x, and the height, which goes from the center, is x plus 1. I want to know what value of x that we can get if we know that the volume is equal to 4 cubic feet. So you got to know your volume formula for a pyramid. It's very similar to the volume formula of a cone, which now we know is what? 1/3. Well, pi r squared was the area of the base, wasn't it?
So xy.
So length times width, because it's the area of the base, times the height. So 1/3 x times x plus 1. All of that has to equal what? 4, because I gave you that the volume is 4. So that's going to be 4 equals 1/3 x squared times x plus 1. You have a couple of options here. You can choose to deal with fractions, or you can choose not to. So how do we choose not to deal with 1/3 on the right side? We do what, Athena? That gives me a nice, pretty number of 12 equals x cubed plus x squared. which means 0 equals x cubed plus x squared minus 12. And remember, when we are trying to solve, which is what I'm asking you to do when I say find values of x, we cannot solve unless the equation is set equal to, which is why the 12 goes to the other side. So, we're going to do p over q, which are going to be factors of what value? 12 over 1, which is factors of 12, positive and negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Synthetic division, what am I going to write? 1, 0, negative 12. Every term has to be accounted for. I'm missing which term? I'm missing my x term. 1, 1, negative 12. I do. You're right. I got to go fairly quickly. All right, 2. 1, 2, 3, 6, 6, 12, 0. Okay. That tells me that x can equal 2. Let's see what I'm left with here. This is x squared plus 3x plus 6. Can't factor that, so negative b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Can you tell right away that this is going to be an imaginary number underneath there? Do you understand that this is going to be imaginary? So do I go any further? So what is my value for x? What is value for x? 2. Because that is the 0 that works. Okay? And we're done. I wouldn't teach it if I didn't want you to know it. Okay, yes.